Welcome back to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, Messiah the son of David. Today we'll be studying Chullin 74. 74 of Chullin, page 74a, top of the page. Ein behen ella mitzvahs pirosh bilvad. In fact, such limbs and flesh are not prohibited by Torah law, as the slaughter does not render them as though they had already fallen off prior to the slaughter, and the verse cited in the Braita is not a true derivation, but a mere support. Accordingly, with regard to them, there is nothing other than a rabbinic mitzvah to separate oneself from consuming them. Yosef, Rav Yosef, Kamei de Rav Huno, Yosef Komao. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Achalol Hazeh Lo Ike Amar Lei Hahu Mirabonon Lo Tatzitzu Le Hachi Amar Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marsa Mishmei de Rav Achalu Lezeh En Lo Ike. Rav Yosef sat before Rav Huna, and he sat and said. I always wonder why it says that. He sat and said. Why does it say it twice? It's fairly common. I don't understand the redundancy. Okay. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says if one ate this hanging limb, he is flogged for violating the prohibition against eating a limb from a living animal. One of the sages said to him, "Do not listen to his statement in the name of Rav, as this is what Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta says in the name of Rav. If one ate this hanging limb, he is not flogged." Amar le Rav Huna anan aman nismoch adrinu Rav Yosef lape Amar le my kushya ki amri ana b'misa de ose nipul ki amar ihu b'shchita de eno ose nipul. Rav Huna said to Rav Yosef, upon whose version of Rav's ruling shall we rely? Rav Yosef turned his face away in anger and said to him, "What is the difficulty? When I said in the name of Rav's name that one is flogged for eating a limb that had been hanging from an animal when it died, I was referring to a case of death by means other than slaughter, which renders the limb as though it had already fallen off prior to the animal's death." When Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta said in the name of Rav that one is not flogged, he was referring to the case of a slaughter which does not render the limb as though it had already fallen off prior to the slaughter, and therefore serves to render the limb permitted for consumption. Amar Rava Mena Hamilsa Dam Rabbanon Miso Oise Nipul Shchita Eina Oise Nipul Dichsiv V'chol asher yipol alav mehem b'mosa yitma Libote mai, ilebon limote bechayeihem midivlosom nafke ela shemamino misa oise nipul v'inshchita oise nipul. Rava said, from where is this matter that the sages stated derived? The death of an animal by means of other than slaughter renders a hanging limb as though it had already fallen off prior to the slaughter, whereas the slaughter of the animal does not render a limb as though it had already fallen off, as it is written with regard to the 8 species of impure creeping animals, and anything that these fall upon when they are dead, it shall be impure. Leviticus 11:32. What does the term "when they are dead" serve to exclude? If we say it serves to exclude the time when they are alive, that principle is derived from, and everything from which any part of their carcass falls shall be impure. Leviticus 11:35, which explicitly states that only their carcasses impart impurity. Rather, learn from the verse that death renders a hanging limb as though it had already fallen off, and slaughter does not render a hanging limb as though it had already fallen off. Amar le Rava davar hava le Ravo Yehokra b'shchotzim ksiv Amar le Imenu inyan shchotzim delav b'nishchit aninu Tenehu inyan lebehemo. Rav Ada bar Ahava said to Rava, but this verse is written with regard to creeping animals which do not require slaughter. How then can a halacha with regard to slaughter be derived from here? Rava said to him, if, because it is superfluous, this verse is not referring to the matter of creeping animals, which are not subject to the requirement of slaughter, apply it to the matter of an animal which is subject to slaughter. Ve'akati mi boyele ke'ein misa lachimit me'im yevesh me'im me'int matamim. The Gemara objects, but the phrase, when they are dead, it shall be impure, is still necessary to teach a different halacha, meaning that they impart impurity only when they are still in a state similar to their state at the time of their death, meaning if they are moist, they impart impurity, whereas if they are dry, they do not impart impurity. The Gemara explains that when they are dead is written twice, once in the verse cited, and once in the previous verse, which states, whoever touches them when they are dead shall be impure until the evening. Leviticus 11:31. Amar Rav Chizda machloikis be'ever de'ubar chai, aval be'ever de'ubar meis, divrei hakol, shchita oisa nipo. V'Rava Amar k'machloikis bazeh, kach machloikis bazeh. The Gemara returns to the dispute in the Mishnah on 72a with regard to a fetus that extended its foreleg and then its mother was slaughtered. Rabbi Meir holds that the foreleg is regarded as a carcass with the associated impurity, while the rabbis hold that although it is not permitted for consumption, the slaughter prevents it from having the impurity of a carcass. With regard to this dispute, Rav Chizda said, the dispute concerns only the limb of a fetus that was alive when the mother was slaughtered, but concerning the case of the limb of a fetus that was dead when the mother was slaughtered, everyone agrees that slaughter renders the fetus's limb as though it had already fallen off prior to the slaughter, and it imparts impurity as a limb from a living animal. But Rabbah said, just as there is a dispute between Rabbi Meir and the rabbis concerning this case, where the fetus was alive, so too there is a dispute between them concerning that case where the fetus had died. Ben Shmona Chai v'Tanya Ben Shmona Chai Yochiach she'af al pi sheyesh b'mino shchita ein shchitaso mitarto. The Mishnah states that an 8-month-old fetus that was born alive is not rendered ritually pure by slaughtering it. The reason given is that the concept of permitting an animal through slaughter is never stated with regard to that kind of animal. The Gemara challenges, but isn't it taught in a Braita in a discussion about whether slaughter renders a treifa pure from the impurity of a carcass? An 8-month-old fetus that was born alive will prove the point, as even though there are other animals of that kind that are permitted through slaughter, its slaughter does not render it pure from having the impurity of a carcass. This refutes the claim that the issue of slaughter rendering an animal pure from having the impurity of a carcass is a function of whether or not the concept of slaughter applies to that kind of animal. Amar Rav Kahana yesh b'mino shchita agav imo Tana didan mina di'imei lo parich. Rav Kahana said, the Tana of the Braita holds that even with regard to an 8-month-old fetus, it can be said that there are animals of that kind that are permitted through slaughter, meaning when they are still inside the womb and the mother is slaughtered, such an animal is permitted by virtue of the slaughter of its mother. Therefore, he cites the case of an 8-month-old fetus as a refutation. But the Tana of our Mishnah holds that the fact that this kind of animal is permitted by virtue of the slaughter of its mother does not define it as a kind of animal concerning which there is a concept of slaughter, and therefore he holds that this case cannot be used as a refutation. The high time de Paris Trefa de Shkita Samitiato Minale Nafkale Midrav Yehuda Amarav Amar Yehuda Amarav. Second here. Okay, where are we? As Yehuda said, the Rav says, okay. The Gemara answer derived from that which Yehuda says that Rav says. Yehuda says that Rav says. Was there? Yeah, I think it was there. Did I say the Aramaic? Let's see the Aramaic again. L'hai Tani Parak today for the Shkashas Mitaras of Anale. Nafka min the Rav Yehuda Marav Damar Yehuda Marav V'amrile B'masnisa Tana Amar Krav Chiyamus min Behema Behema Miktas Behema Mitama Miktas Behema Eino Mitama Ve'ezo Zo Trefa Shechata. The Gemara asks that according to that Tana of the Braita, who does use it as a refutation, from where does he derive that the slaughter of a treifa renders it pure from having the impurity of a carcass? The Gemara answers that he derives it from that which Yehuda says that Rav says, as Yehuda says that Rav says, and some say it was taught in the Braita. The verse states, "And if some domesticated animal of which you may eat dies, one who touches its carcass shall be impure until the evening." Leviticus 11:39. The word "some" teaches that only some dead animals impart impurity as a carcass, but some dead animals do not impart impurity as a carcass. And what is that? And what is it that does not impart impurity? That is a treifa that one slaughtered. Mahu. Yehoshua raises a dilemma. If one inserted his hand inside the womb of an animal and slaughtered a 9-month-old fetus that was alive, what is the halacha? Does the slaughter performed inside the mother render the fetus permitted? The Gemara notes this dilemma may be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and it may be raised according to the opinion of the rabbis. Rabbi Meir ad kan lo kamar Rabbi Meir ben pekua taun shchita dehani mili heichad yatsa le'avir oilam avome imoi. The Gemara elaborates, it may be raised according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir. It is possible that Rabbi Meir states in the Mishnah below that a 9-month-old ben pekua requires slaughter, and slaughter renders the animal permitted only in that case, because that statement may only apply in a case where the animal emerged into the airspace of the world, meaning it was born alive. But if it is still inside the mother, its slaughter does not render it permitted. Or perhaps even the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Meir and maintain that 9-month-old ben pekua is permitted by virtue of its mother's slaughter would concede that the slaughter of the fetus itself also permits it. Perhaps with regard to such an animal, the merciful one considers 4 simanim, meaning the windpipe and the gullet of the mother and the windpipe of the gullet of the fetus, to be fit for slaughter, and the fetus is permitted by the cutting of either pair. Amar Rav Chananya Tashima Sharei Harei Shenod Trefa Min Abatin Betin V'Yisam Mishkachas La Dehaisela Shasa Koisher Di Boyale Yedei V'Shachata. Rav Chananya said, come in here a resolution of this dilemma from the Mishnah 72b, as it considers the animal that was born as a treifa from the womb as one that never had a period of potential fitness. But if it is so that one can slaughter a fetus in its mother's womb, you find that it actually did have a period of potential fitness. As if one wants to, he can insert his hand into the womb and slaughter it before it develops into a treifa. Amar le Rava Tani Shenotzra Treifa Min Betin Mishkachas La Bebalas Chamesh Ragalayim. Rava said to Chananya, teach that Mishnah as referring to a case where the fetus was formed as a treifa from its outset while inside the womb, and you find such a case where a fetus has 5 legs, which certainly developed from the outset. Consequently, there was never a possibility of slaughtering it. Okay, that's it. Now the Mishnah. We'll start the Mishnah and go on to the next daf. Okay, Mishnah says, Ashochet behema umatzaba ben shmoina chai oy meis oy ben tisha meis. In the case of one who slaughtered an animal and found within it an 8-month-old fetus, meaning one that was not full term, whether it was alive or dead, or a 9-month-old fetus, meaning that it was full term that was dead, that fetus is permitted by virtue of the slaughter of its mother, as it is considered part of its mother. Therefore, its blood is considered part of its mother's blood and is prohibited. So, one must tear the fetus and remove its blood before it may be consumed. Matzah ben tisha chai ta'un shchita v'chaya v'oisa v'espeno divrei Rabbi Meir. Shchitas imo mitaharto. If he found within it a live 9-month-old fetus, it requires its own slaughter, as is considered an independent full-fledged animal. And if one slaughters both the mother and fetus on the same day, one is liable for violating the prohibition against slaughtering an animal itself and its offspring on the same day. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say, even when the fetus is 9 months old, it is still considered part of its mother, and the slaughter of its mother renders it permitted for consumption. Now, 74b, Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, top of the page. Rabbi Shimon Shezuri Omer. Rabbi Shimon Shezuri says, Afilu ben chamesh shanim b'choiresh basadeh shchitas imoi mitahalto kara'ah. What was that? Kara'ah masaba ben tisha chai ta'un shchita lefi shelo nishchata imo. Rabbi Shimon Shezuri says, even if the fetus emerged alive and is now 5 years old and plowing the field, the earlier slaughter of its mother rendered it permitted, and it does not require slaughter before it is eaten. But if one tore an animal, meaning he killed it without slaughtering it, and inside he found a live 9-month-old fetus, everyone agrees that the fetus required its own slaughter because its mother was not slaughtered.